No. Well, I bet my guest this week had wished he'd said no on more than one occasion. Andrew Fraser's journey has been from leafy suburban comfort to the wrong side of the tracks and back. Andrew was a high-profile Melbourne lawyer defending some of the country's most hardened criminals and colourful identities. Lewis Moran was a favourite. But then Andrew Fraser's life imploded with an expensive drug habit, surveillance, a major bust, and years in jail. Andrew Fraser, welcome to Talking Heads.
Thanks very much for the invitation.
In your days as a criminal lawyer, how much of your time is taken up by defending the big fish, the underworld?
Most of it. Once I'd become experienced and got a reputation, I was appearing for those blokes all the time.
So the skill list for being a good criminal lawyer is what?
Certainly you don't have to be a great intellect. I think the skill list is stand up straight, look like a lawyer, look like you know what you're talking about, loud voice, try and be convincing.
Loud voice?
Yes.
This stamps authority in the room, does it?
It does.
It's
theatrical.
Often compared to theatre, acting.
Yes.
How can you stop yourself getting too close to the characters that you're defending?
Well, the trick is, and of all people, I fell foul of that, but initially you don't socialise with them because you're seen to be a crook yourself by the police particularly.
You got to be thought of that way?
Oh, I most certainly got caught up that way, there's no doubt. And it got to the stage where that's who I was socialising with. Not because I liked them, but because that was the source of my drug.
But you did like them, didn't you? Didn't you find them...
Some of the clients I did like.
Who did you like?
Well, I liked Moran a lot. And I'd consider he was a friend, and I actually trusted Lewis. But there were other clients, and they know who they are, rather than mention their names.
Don't want to be associated with you.
Well, that's probably right too. But no, some of the good old-fashioned crooks I liked.
These things seem bizarre too.
Drugs have changed everything. It's now the young, violent, couldn't care less, devil may care attitude that's getting you to the top in the drug trade now, and that's where the money is.
Well, just to summarise, or to cut to the chase about what happened to you, you were convicted of giving advice to a drug dealer, who was in fact your drug supplier,
yes,
about how to avoid customs on a drug deal.
What I essentially said to him was, be careful coming through customs, you know the ropes, which he did because he was an international drug runner by occupation, and when you get through, give me a ring.
Had it occurred to you you might be under surveillance?
I was actually told I was, and I thought it was all nonsense. That's what coke does to you. You really do lose your judgment. I think colour and action's always sort of attracted me, and the edge. Looking back now, if I'd maintained a lower profile, none of this probably would have happened. But that was the persona I developed and the persona I put before the public. I grew up in Camberwell, a leafy eastern suburb, as they like to refer to it. Quintessential middle-class establishment family. Mum didn't work, as the mums didn't then, so Mum was always there. Dad wasn't. Dad was an alcoholic, and I describe him as a shadowy presence in my life. It was my grandfather, my mother's father, probably the person I've admired most just about in my life. He was a lawyer. He'd nearly lost his leg on the Somme, and he was a bloke who always believed in the fair go. Wesley and the Frasers are a bit of a tradition. Dad went there, so I went there. Very much an establishment school, beautiful big old school sitting back off St Kilda Road. I was the class clown always, and I couldn't help myself taking the piss with the teachers. I just couldn't help myself. Look, I just didn't bust the boiler at school academically, frankly. Anything past 50 was wasted in my view. I was a good runner. The thing I like about athletics is that it's rather like the law. That is, it's up to you. You're the one who goes out to run in the race and you go out to win. If I hadn't have got into law, I really don't know what I would have done. I really had no desire to do anything else.
Now, I know your father's died, but your mother's alive.
Yes.
What hopes did she invest in you?
Oh, a lot, I think. And I think I've given Mum just about every grey hair on her head. Mum's single-handedly responsible for me getting my matric and getting into law. And once I got into law, for some reason, I thought to myself, this is what I've been looking for, and I loved it, and I actually did rather well. So I can remember the first time I got an honour, I've walked up and I've been that used to being at the wrong end of the class. I looked at the passes and I've gone, oh, failed. I thought I did all right.
I'm mystified by this lack of self-esteem you talk about, because things are going along pretty well on the surface, aren't they?
I think that's what drives a lot of successful people. I think right from the word go, I doubt that I've had a lot of self-esteem or low self-esteem back then. I think now, where I sit now for the first time in my life, I'm comfortable in my own skin.
It must have been quite an eye-opener for the Wesley College old boy to start to meet the Melbourne underworld.
My practice travelled everywhere, and I met people that you only read about in the papers or in novels.
What did you like about it?
I liked the thrill of it, I think. I can remember the first time I went to, I was called, to act for a bloke called the Mushroom. Here's a pub full of painters and dockers. And I now realise it was all done for my benefit. I've met the Mushroom and met all these other blokes, and some bloke turns around and says, turn that bloody telly down. And of course all I had was the races on it, an old black and white one, and next minute I hear bang, bang, he's hauled the pistol out of his painters and dockers overalls and just gone bang, bang and shot the telly out and just stuck it back in and said, now what were you saying? My eyes were out on stalks. I couldn't believe it.
They put on a good show.
Oh, it was a terrific show. And
on the other hand, I can imagine if I went into that, I'd be horrified.
Now I realise it was all for my benefit, and it was a ripping show and something I've never forgotten and never will. In terms of being a criminal lawyer, I've never accepted Her Majesty's shilling and prosecuted. The sort of people that I came in contact with were people I'd never stumbled across in my entire existence. I went to parts of Melbourne that I didn't know existed because living in the leafy eastern suburbs and going to a privileged school, you just don't see this. I can still remember the first armed robbery I got was a big pay rise, and these blokes were serious Port Melbourne crooks. And I was tickled pink that I got this trial. Tickled pink. And then when we got the first murder trial, how good was that? At one stage there I had the real who's who of Melbourne's crooks on the books. I picked up clients like Lewis Moran. Lewis was my oldest and dearest client, and somebody I liked. I acted for the Allens and the Pettingills all the way through Dennis Allen's glory days as Melbourne's probably most ruthless, murderous heroin dealer. The old-fashioned crook, they did have honour amongst thieves, quite literally, and they would pay their lawyers. I was fascinated with these people, absolutely fascinated, enthralled.
The two officers left the station at 4:38. Minutes later, without warning, the two rookie officers were gunned down.
The Wall Street killings took place 21 years ago, and it was the cold-blooded murder of two young coppers.
Police have not ruled out the possibility of an underworld revenge killing.
The coppers went berserk, and ultimately they arrested 4 blokes, and I'd acted for all 4 of them at one stage or another. I acted for Trevor Pettingill in the trial, and from that day forward I've been persona non grata with a lot of coppers, and still am. That had a profound impact on the rest of my life, that trial. Profound. And none of it positive.
The man once regarded as a national hero arrived at court this morning in a police van. Alan Bond was found guilty.
There were 2 cases for Bond. One was the Love Promenade, which was Edward Monet's painting, and the second was the Bell Resources cash strip.
Mr. Bond's pleaded guilty to 2 counts. That's in full satisfaction of the indictment relating to the Bell Resources matter.
And there's no doubt that was the biggest case in this country at the time. And there was a lot of professional jealousy, I can tell you, a lot. But the other significant aspect, of course, was he paid a lot of money. We had a flat at Falls Creek, and the kids were only tiny then, and there's some great photos of them skiing and looking gorgeous in their little snowsuits and their little sunburnt faces. And it was a really special time for us whenever we had the time to do it.
What are the rules about if you know the client is guilty?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. Everybody's entitled to a defence. You defend them to the best of your ability without misleading the court. If, however, the client comes in and says, I've done it, I'm guilty, and this is what I did, you are stuck with those instructions, and you are obliged then to tell the client you are going to be pleading guilty to this.
Is it okay to say to your new clients, those that don't know the rules, hey, you can't say to me whether you've done this or not done this?
Oh, well, I did it slightly differently. What I would do is people always want to sort of purge themselves and sit there and say, no, hang on a moment, before you start that, what have you got here? Have you got any paperwork? Let me have a look at that. I want to ask you a few questions. I only want you to answer those questions and nothing else. I would send them away. I would read the brief and decide whether they had a defence without them saying anything.
Of course, a lot of barristers say, there's the cab rank rule where you have to take the cases that are presented and so on and so forth.
Yes, and they all say that, and they're all jolly good chaps, and that. You
didn't work on the cab rank rule. You took on what you had to take on. You developed this business.
Well, I picked and chose.
Yeah. Of course, a lot of people would find it repugnant. Just couldn't do it to defend the Pettingills or the Dennis Allen or Lewis Moran. All of these people.
Yep.
So why were you comfortable with it?
I've always been fascinated by the concept of being a criminal lawyer. I've been fascinated by the crimes. I've been fascinated by the courtroom. And I've been fascinated, unfortunately, by prisons, and I got to have a fairly good look at that.
Were you euphoric when you'd win a case?
Yes.
Did you stop and reflect about your success and worry about the other side of the coin?
A couple of times when blokes got off that I reckon probably had done it. Wall Street was one of them. I was pretty sure that Victor Pearce and Chet Horton had done it.
That sounds like a practical sort of analysis rather than...
Yeah, well, there was an analysis.
What have I...
no.
My greatest success is sort of getting off the guilty.
No, you don't. You can't afford to do that. You really can't. You've got to be clinical. You've got to be cold and analytical about it.
That sounds like you can't afford to allow a moral element.
Well, you're not. People regularly confuse morals and the law. Morals have got nothing to do with the law. They may have had a long while ago, but these days the law is, in my view, frankly, an arcane game played by essentially privileged men dressed in 16th century costumes. They've not only lost sight of the moral aspect of it, they've lost sight of the practical aspect of it, and they've lost sight of society's view of it. There's no doubt about it, I worked very hard, but I played hard as well. I liked all the accoutrement of success, the nice suits, the nice restaurants, the nice car. I enjoyed seeing and being seen at the best restaurants and the best places to go for a drink. I started using cocaine socially, and I mean socially. Cocaine makes you feel like you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And anything's possible. For me, with my type of personality, it was the wrong drug. I took it and I liked it. And it took over my life.
Here we go!
Self-delusion is the worst thing of the lot. I'm okay. I've got a handle on it. I'm under control. Well, no, you're not. Because while you're deluding yourself. The drug is getting a firmer and firmer grip on you until it's too late.
Andrew Fraser will be behind bars, mixing with many clients he's once defended. In his 30-year career, Fraser acted for such clients as Alan Bond, but it all came undone in August 1999. Supporting a $100,000 a year cocaine habit, Fraser gave advice and encouraged the importation of cocaine worth up to $2.7 million, smuggled in African wool plaques.
I was arrested, charged, sentenced. 7 years with a 5-year minimum. I think it's impossible to picture a more complete and utter fall from grace than I suffered. And I only have myself to blame for it, I hasten to add. 5 years in jail is one hell of a long time. Because what you do is you think back to the previous 5 years and what you'd done in all that time. And that's how long you were going to be away. I spent 3 years in maximum security. I was in with psychopaths in the true sense of the word. I was in with the worst of the child molesters and the rapist murderers and sex offenders. Awful. People that you wouldn't pick up with a stick. People that I would never have acted for. Never. I suffered panic attacks and I'd never suffered them before. I suffered depression and I used to think that was a lot of nonsense, depression. Well, it's not, and it's awful. They had my body, but they didn't have my mind. I cut myself off from everything to do with jail and spent time reading, writing, and I devoured book after book after book. Books meant everything to me. I couldn't wait for people to come on a visit because they'd always bring a couple of books.
In the case of the drug deal that you got associated with,
yep,
and then convicted for your role in that, the plan was to use a woman as a mule.
Well, I didn't know that. I was told that subsequently, yes.
You were told that subsequently?
I was told it the night we had the discussion.
In your office?
Yeah.
Whatever else you think, I'm just curious about how you could have known that and actually not been deeply disturbed by it.
Well, I was disturbed by it, but you are, and this is an explanation, not an excuse, you are in such a grip of the addiction, you're scared of your supplier running out. Luckily, that woman only spent a couple of weeks in custody before she had all the charges against her withdrawn. But once again, it wasn't my idea, and I didn't recruit her, and I didn't have anything. Wouldn't have known her if I'd fallen over her.
Yes, but in your office.
But I do accept. I accept that I had the discussion with him about how much he was going to pay her, and I certainly accept that it's morally reprehensible.
You must have had a lot of friends in jail,
yes,
people that you'd
yes,
acted for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did that provide a level of protection for you?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. But not in protection. If I'd been in mainstream, I would have done it a lot easier. But I reckon I was put in protection to make it more difficult.
Some people would say, well, he was sent to jail, may have been for a long time for that, but he's come good. Jail worked.
No, you rehabilitate yourself. Jail doesn't rehabilitate you. I'd like you to really get that clear, and everybody that watches this interview should be disgusted. I went to jail for 5 years and I thought, I'll do a degree, I'll do something else, I'll do a master's, I'll do an honours, something. It took 1 year before anybody came to see me about my suitability for education. And by the way, the parole board don't squeak out of this without a nice little... Why do you not see the parole board until your sentence is finished?
What was your rehabilitation then?
I rehabilitated myself before I went to jail. I'd been clean for 26 months.
Is this true of all sort of white-collar criminals?
No.
They can see in retrospect they shouldn't have done it?
No, not at all. I'll give you, for instance, about rehabilitation. I'm at Fulham and by this time I'm living in the minimum security and called the cottages. But I heard this chunking noise, and I've gone out to have a look, and there's about 12 painters in their white overalls pushing a mobile scaffold, and that was the thing that was making the noise. And I said to the screw, "What's this?" He said, "Oh, it's contract maintenance." I said, "There's 750 blokes here, most of them are unskilled. Why haven't you got one painter with 10 apprentices doing the painting?" And he said, occupational health and safety. I said, "Well, that is just utter crap, because if you're an apprentice, you can go over the 2-metre height."
Let's go back to you. Yours is a story really of a flawed character.
Yes.
Have you made good?
I think so. I'm building a new life.
What was your flaw? Was it using the drugs? Or did it go beyond that?
I think my flaw is that I was driven by the fear of failure and always have been. And the cocaine made me even, how would I put it? It made me feel like I was pursuing my goal even more effectively. Does that mean, if that makes sense? I don't think there's a day go by that I don't think about what I did to my family, and the impact on them was profound. They were kids, and I shouldn't have done that to them. I was there to look after them. That's what dads are for, and I deserted them.
Liking school this year, aren't you?
A lot better than last year.
Good. Liv, why do you do hospitality anyway?
I try and do as much with them as I can, be as supportive as I can, do all the things with them that I can. We still go skiing each year.
What date are we going to Falls?
Second week of the holidays. Who's going to cook that?
Very well.
You'll cook?
I'll cook.
Will you really?
I'm a better cook than you.
Remember our first date?
Yeah, well...
second or third date, actually.
Yes, it was New Year's Eve and I cooked Lindy dinner.
And I think that's when I decided that I wasn't going to let you get away.
I met Lindy on a blind date and I was completely taken from the minute I laid eyes on her. But I was just out of jail and freshly single as well, and so bloke was a bit out of practice.
If you don't mind doing the onions, that would be great.
Relish should have a bright colour and lively flavour. I'm comfortable with her. For the first time in my life, I'm comfortable in my own skin, and that's a big statement from me. Why do blokes always have to chop onions?
Something to do with mascara, I think.
Is that right? She's the heavy hitter in the outfit now, and I'm the house husband. For somebody of my type, that's a real change. I'm unable to practice. I've been struck off. These days, I'm an author. I wanted to tell it like it really is. You know, I've written 2 books are published and third one's just finished, and I enjoy the freedom I have in my life now. I wouldn't make 10% of what I used to make, but I've got a great quality of life. You don't realise that you're not happy with yourself until somebody grabs you by the throat. Well, that came in the form of 5 years jail, and there you have a long while to reflect. And I did, and I didn't like what I saw or what I had become. And I promised myself that I would not go back there. And I haven't, and I won't.
That relish we saw has won prizes.
Yes, last year we managed to take off the blue ribbon in the relish section, so we were pretty happy with ourselves.
Now, you're spending your time writing, but you've also overseen quite big film production, a series of 10 programs made called Killing Time.
Called Killing Time, that's right.
It's good to see that you're using your experience.
Yes. The names have been changed to protect the guilty, though. And we...
They're all guilty, aren't they?
Yeah. Only until your money runs out. Yeah. No, what is it? Justice is something you get when your money runs out. That's right.
Now, David Wenham, he's playing Andrew Fraser.
He's playing, yes. As I made the comment the other day, they'll have a fair bit of time with him in the makeup department, uglying him up sufficiently to play me.
How good is freedom?
Fantastic. Fantastic. And how good is what I'm doing now? I actually said to somebody the other day, you know what happened to... He was a lawyer who'd been having a shocking day in court. And I said, you know what I did this morning? I said, at about 11 o'clock the sun came out, so I went for my run then. And he said, why? I said, because I could. And I think that says it all.
Andrew, thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you very much for the invite.
Join us tomorrow for California's high finance and the prospect of legalising marijuana to avoid state bankruptcy on Foreign Correspondent.